Good to start?
We feel better on the ground.
I feel better on the ground, huh?
Yeah,
We're all equal.
More connected.
we're all at the same level.
Same level. That's nice. I like
Right.
that. So, before I start, it is customary that before we discuss transcendental knowledge, we actually say a short prayer. I didn't do it on Tuesday just because the nature of the program was that we were discussing together as opposed to it being discussing from a specific literature. But this one here, Perfect Question, Perfect Answers, is from this book that you can see. So I will just recite a small prayer, keep it short, and then you can just hear the sound vibration enter, because I think only Ralph wasn't here, but I'm sure John and Xavier filled you in on Tuesday's program. So the power of sound vibration. So just a quick one. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the reason why we start with prayers is because it's customary in many traditions to invoke the blessings of the personalities that have helped us become, well, not necessarily become enlightened, but to enlighten us with the knowledge, with the wisdom texts. And so we seek in their blessings, their support, and being able to speak something which is authentic, speak something which is reflective of the wisdom, and then for all of those who listen, then it can penetrate the heart for the speaker as well as the hearers. So this is a 3-part series of this small book. As you can see, it's a really small book actually. It's I don't know how many pages it is. I think it's maybe like max 100, if that, pages. But it's filled with a lot of nectar. And schedule-wise, if I just do this. So I thought I kind of tried to break it up into sections, into 3 logical sections. So today we'll basically go through the basis of inquiry. So we kind of go through a bit of background on foundations of spiritual searches. So I think most of you are probably already familiar, like Anuj, I know we were speaking, then John, on Tuesday we were speaking about trying to find things. And Xavier, just hearing you on the dinner table on Tuesday, it sounds like you've had a lot of experience with searching for your own sense of being and identity, right?
Always a student. When
Right.
I start calling myself a scholar, that means I'm learning.
Yeah, no, that's true. Once we start thinking that we're somebody, that's when we realize we're actually a nobody. So it's nice. So that's the first one. And then, logically speaking, in the book, the first part in the book that gets discussed is this idea of God. Who is God? Then second section, which will be tomorrow, spiritual living, and this idea of what does a spiritual practitioner's worldview really look like? So we kind of had an experience, a taste of it on Tuesday with this idea of higher consciousness. But we'll see a bit more detail of different facets of life. And then on Saturday, which will be early, I think like 11 a.m. start or something like that, we'll be talking through the path to perfection. This idea of what actually does perfection in spiritual life look like according to the Vedic traditions, right? So different practices will have different ideas of what perfection looks like. But what does perfection look like from the Vedic tradition perspective? And I'm assuming people have not read PQPA, or Perfect Question, Perfect Answers, but these are basically all the chapters in the book, right? So it starts off with introduction, and then there's 9 chapters, and then there's concluding words. So, just to kind of simplify it, first 2 sections is what we will take today. And hopefully tomorrow we'll cover up to and including chapter 5, and then chapters 6 to 9 are quite interlinked, so that forms a nice basis for the last section. And like Tuesday, if you have questions or thoughts or anything like that, please do just speak up. Maybe at the end of each section, it will be easier to manage. Yeah. So, question for everyone. What determines the quality of your life? So what do you think determines the quality of your life?
Abundance and love.
Sorry?
Abundance and love.
Abundance in love. Okay.
Spreading it.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Purity.
Purity. Okay.
Happiness.
Happiness. So these things affect anything, Ralph, you'd like to share? No? Okay. So it's a common understanding that the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our questions, actually. We're searching for happiness, but do we question where that happiness can be found? We're searching for abundance of love, but we've all experienced relationships in this world where we think they're loving relationships, but then something happens. And then we question whether it was love or something else. But we find that in life we have so many questions, right? You could put so many questions on a spinning wheel. What are these? What's your favorite TV show? That's a question. What would you do if you were stranded? What's your favorite color? What books do you like? Your favorite memories? So many questions we can ask people in life. But something I brought up on Tuesday, the quality of our questions, the quality of our discussions determines the quality of our life. Small minds discuss people. Average minds discuss events, and big minds discuss ideas. And when you look at these discussions, when you look at these questions that people may ask and speak to each other on, there's always an element of trying to seek out a truth. And that truth could be of a superficial nature, like, okay, Xavier, how are you doing? What do you like in your life? Where do you come from, etc. These are all quite superficial, right? I'm getting to know you, but on a very surface level. I'm just getting to know Xavier, the person who's existed so far, or who's existing right now. But then I can take it deeper and have discussions on an experiential level. Like, what have you experienced in your life, Ralph, that really touched your heart? Now I'm going a bit deeper in understanding Ralph as a person. But then there's discussions based on wisdom. This idea of, okay, I want to connect with John, but I want to go deeper, not just in understanding who John is, but what do we actually stand for in life? Where are we actually going? What's our trajectory in life? And what experiences, what life events, what have we read, what have we discussed, what have you been through that is now shaping where you want to go in life? Xavier.
All sacrifice is holy works, but wisdom is the most holy of sacrifices.
Yeah.
Bhagavad Gita, picked it up today. Couldn't put it down. Beautiful.
Oh, wow. Which one? Bhagavad Gita?
Yes.
It's the penguin.
Yes.
Oh, the penguin is. Oh, so, okay,
Yeah.
nice. Do you need to turn that on, by the way?
Hmm?
Do you need to turn that one on?
Oh, you know, to
For the mic,
take
yeah.
the-
Nice, yeah. So I was speaking to John because he brought that in with his hand like open, and it was like he's reading through the translations. It's nice.
It all starts with asking one of them to hold it for me.
Yeah, just flip open a page and see what it translates into what I'm currently doing or how I'm
Oh wow,
utilizing it.
that's impressive. I think you have to keep it pressed down. Otherwise it's fine. Okay, there we go. Maybe just keep it in the middle. I think.
Yeah,
Will it
if
pick
you're
up?
Speaking, you can just
Yeah.
hold that.
Yeah, it's just for the recording. So, but yeah, you're right. Like wisdom determines. Wisdom is the greatest sacrifice. It's the one that we really want to focus on. And it's said that spiritual life actually doesn't start until we have questions of a higher nature. For example, you might see a scene like this on the news, on the TV, or may have experienced it. I know Xavier, you would have. But why do bad things happen to good people? Something like that. Or why is there warfare in the world? Questioning what's happening. Or maybe you're at somebody's funeral and you're thinking, well, is that it? Is that the end for the person? Is that the end for the relationship? Or maybe something more pleasurable. You're looking at nature, maybe you've gone out and then you're seeing the beautiful mountains, the beautiful lake, natural reserves. And you're thinking like, wow, where did this come from? How did this come into being? we're used to seeing people creating like fancy models, and then something like this is like a whole mass scale beauty. Actually, I don't have this on, but how many people know Newton? Isaac Newton, right? So he had created a model of the universe in his basement once. I forget what it's called, I forget the official term, but back in the day you'd have a crank and you'd have the whole universe system, and when you turn the crank it would basically depict the motions of the thing.
The cycles of.
Yeah, the cycle of the planets. And what had happened was that he had finished creating it just early in the morning, and one of his scientist friends also came into the basement, and he was like looking, wow, such an amazing model. And so he started playing with the crank, and then he was asking, wow, I didn't know you were creating this. Did you make this, Newton? And Isaac Newton's like, he got annoyed. He was like, no, I didn't make it. I just turned up this morning, went down, and it was there. And his scientist friend's like, no way that's true. There's no way this model just landed in your basement out of nowhere. Like, how can such intelligent design come in the basement? And so Isaac Newton's then like, oh, so you can believe that this universe, which is the mass scale of this small model, landed by magic, but you can't believe that this model was just landed by magic. Because Isaac Newton, even though he was a scientist or a philosopher, whichever you want to term him as, he also was a religionist. He also believed in creation. He also believed in God. There's debate and argument or controversy around whether he believed in a personal aspect of God or not, but he believed in higher power, basically, is the point. He believed in creation, not just created. So we might have these sorts of questions. But something that all of us end up going through at some point in life, maybe you already have, maybe you're going through it now, or you will in the future, is confusion about your own existence. Questions like, who am I? Why am I here? Or what's my future like? And there's multiple things we can do when we have these questions. Some people might just suppress them, be like, okay, just get on with the day. I don't have time to think about these things. Some people might be thinking, okay, well, I need to find my purpose. I need to find what the heck I'm meant to be doing here. Who am I? Why am I here? Like, what am I meant to be doing in my life? Do I just work a 9 to 5 and then that's it? That's my life done? Like, that's what my life is, 9 to 5 work, 5 to 9, sleep, eat, be merry, back to work the next day? And usually there's two streams of thoughts that people go through. So one is they take no guidance, they take no help in how to get these questions answered. And what usually happens is that then the confusion, the insecurity starts increasing. It's like, okay, like, I'm not getting help. I'm going to try and deal with it myself. But then all the cogs start spinning in the head and all the cogs start clashing. And then what happens is that you run into a crisis. Because now you're internally fighting yourself. Because you don't know what you're doing, you don't know where you're going. And now you feel stuck. And that sometimes, or oftentimes, leads people down to depression. Because they thought they knew what they were doing in life, but now they've hit a block and they don't know what to do next. Or we can take guidance. Right? That's another option. We can take help. And when we take the right help, we get clarity, we get purpose. We get better understanding of what's happening. And that leads to existential awakening. Because now you're finding that, okay, this is where I'm meant to go in my life. This is what I'm meant to be doing. Yes, I might have my 9 to 5 job, but I know how to maximize my 24 hours in the day to take the trajectory that I want to take in life. And then that can lead to happiness. Because now the core, the fundamental questions of life are being answered. But how do we know what is the right guidance? And the Vedic literature described there's 3 aspects that we should look for when we're looking for guidance. One which is called Sajatiya, somebody who knows us, somebody who is close to us, who is our friend. Somebody who loves us. Because if they love us, then we know they've got our best intent in mind. They're not trying to corral us into doing something for their benefit. And thirdly, they can actually help us. They're further along that path, that line, or that thought process in their own journey, but they're further along. They're more advanced, they're more stable. And so we can trust that, okay, they've done something right to get their questions answered. Maybe they can help me in answering my questions. And we see a lot of these questions bring about lots of decisions that we have to make. Should I listen to this guy? Should I listen to that guy? Should I read this book? Should I read that book? Should I follow this sort of practice and try it out, or should I do something else? And we have so many decisions to make. And the worst part of decisions is that there's no control Z. Because you can't undo a decision you've made. And so oftentimes we end up having 4 sorts of things that happen in decisions. Some people become indecisive. Like, okay, there's so many options, I don't know which one to take. Some people they start practicing indiscretion. They're like, okay, there's 5 options, doesn't matter which one we take. Because at the end of the day, I don't know what the right answer is. So just pick one at random. But those who really want to grow in life, they do 2 things, or at least one of the next 2 things. First one is introspection. They actually go deep. They go, okay, there's these 5 options available to me. What does it actually mean for me? If I picked option 1, how does that affect me? How does that affect the people around me? How does that affect the trajectory that I want to take? They're looking at how that affects the present and the future for themselves and those around them. And the other thing is that they look for inspiration. Because you can make the most boring decision and it would just feel like a chore, even if it's the right thing to do, if you don't feel inspired in making that decision or following that decision through. You know, typical one, homework in school, at least for most of us. It's like, okay, you just have to get it done. You might not be inspired, but maybe you had a teacher that was so inspiring, it's like, you felt like, okay, I really want to connect with this teacher, so you do whatever the teacher asks you to do. Because you just feel inspired by them. The teacher tells you to sit outside for 10 minutes, you go sit outside for 10 minutes. Really bad example, but let's go with it anyway. The teacher's telling you, meet me in the teacher's office at 5 p.m. Even though school finishes at 3, you're waiting there outside because you're like, I'm inspired by this teacher, I want to connect with the teacher, I really want time with the teacher, with a mentor, whoever it is. Like when you were speaking, Xavier, on Tuesday night, you were there with your team, even though you didn't have to, you wanted to change roles or jobs, etc. But you stayed on because you saw that the team needed a leader. They needed inspiration from somebody experienced who can provide the inspiration.
Yes.
But what about decisions related to things that aren't of the material world? You know, if I'm talking about a career, I can find inspiration in my mentors, in my leaders, in my teachers. If I'm talking about relationships, I can speak to people who have relationships in the world, who are maybe counselors or relationship gurus, or the Agni Aunt. I don't know if US has an Agni Aunt situation, but okay. Agni Aunt is basically, if you've got a problem, if you've got some issue, you write into the Agni Aunt. They're like completely independent, they're anonymous, and then they give you all these advice, etc., etc. I'm not saying it works, by the way, but it's like kind of their profession.
At least you get insight in other people's opinions and
Right.
what they would take it.
Yeah.
Helps with things.
So where do we turn to if we want to find inspiration for things that aren't of this world?
God.
God. Not Google.
God.
Not Google.
Not Google. No, not Google. They need to hear this. Everybody must hear that.
Right? Because you need personal questions answered, and Google, not even ChatGPT can answer your personal questions.
Mm.
Right? So where do we turn to? So, as Xavier said, God. But there's different ways that we can access God. One is through the scriptures, which we define as like the guidebooks. Like in Islam, you have the Quran, the Hadith. In Vedic traditions, we have the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, or all these other Vedic literatures that we've got. We can turn to spiritual teachers. If we go to teachers in the material world for career advice, for school help, for these different things, then why not teachers for our spiritual life? Those who are more advanced. And they're described as like an outer guru. But then we can also turn to the God within, which is termed as the super soul, which is defined as the inner guru. But we have to be careful with that one, because oftentimes the way it's described with the super soul is that it's basically sometimes it's the gut feel or that instinct. But that might not necessarily be God speaking from within. That could just be our own mind. That could just be our own previous habits. Imagine an alcoholic that's trying to give up alcohol, and he's getting this voice inside his head, drink, you need to go to the pub, you need to go to the pub. And then people are like, that's the inner voice of God, you need to go to the pub. Now, we all know that's not going to be true, right? So we have to be careful with the third one. It's described actually in the Vedic literature that the super soul is specifically reserved for those who are spiritually advanced, because they can actually connect and understand what God is actually saying. Xavier.
The way I have explained it is we are to align our moral compass with that of God. And how might we know how to do that? Because as we know that Brahma, how might we explain Brahma? The beauty can be seen in the flash of lightning, and the beauty can be seen in the wonder of a vision. That was in the Kiva Upanishad. So it can be difficult to align with the moral compass of Brahma, because Brahma is all things. And as we know, any one single one of us is not. But how we might be able to better do that is considering the avatar. As we are now able to learn about God in all of his beautiful parts. I cannot say that I love the heart of rabbit, but I do not love rabbit. So I cannot say Hare Krishna without loving God, as Krishna is somewhat of the heart of God.
Yeah, we talk about the name Krishna as well later on. But yeah, you're right. We have to learn the art of love in that as well. So, if in our mundane material life we turn to mentors, then we also have to turn to mentors in our spiritual life. Because at the end of the day, they're more advanced. They've walked the path. Okay, Xavier, I can see you've read many, many literatures. And you're walking the path. And by reading the literatures, you may also be reading the commentaries of the spiritual teachers of the past. Like, I think the Penguin book is just translations. But if you had the Bhagavad Gita as it is, the one that I was showing on Tuesday.
Forward by the translator, but I believe much is intact. I made sure to pick up
Nice.
as is online from what I was able to read.
That's nice.
They didn't have it in store, unfortunately.
But yeah, I don't know if you've got some. Do you have a yeah?
Yeah.
So if you wanted the Bhagavad Gita as it is,
Much
the one, and I'll talk more about why that version, then you'll see that it's got commentaries from the spiritual teachers of the past, all succinctly put in and summarized. Because then that helps us understand the heart of God. At the end of the day, like we just met on Tuesday. I know Surabhi Kunj from quite a lot longer. If I wrote a book on anything, on any topic, and I handed it to John, one copy to John, one copy to Surabhi Kunj, you're both reading the same text. You're both reading the same words. You both recognize that the author is me. But who's going to understand it better? Who's going to understand what I'm trying to portray in the book better? Right? The person who knows me the most. So in the same way, the spiritual teachers who are connected to God more than we are, they can help reveal God's heart to us better than we can by just reading the book ourselves. So, and that's where perfect question, perfect answers comes in. This book, and if you would like a copy, then please do let us know at the end. This book is basically a compilation of conversations and even some letter exchanges between two personalities. One is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, so the personality that I spoke about last time, but he is basically the founder of ISKCON, right? The community that we really, the movement that we really represent. And the second personality is somebody called Bob Cohen, who at that time, when these conversations were taking place, he was just an ordinary Peace Corps worker. He had traveled to India for a spiritual search, actually, because he had lots of questions that he was like, I need to find out who I am. I need to understand what I'm meant to be doing in life. And so that took him on a journey from America to India, and specifically to a place called Mayapur, where in a small hut, Prabhupada was basically staying and giving talks, etc. And Bob Cohen had heard him for quite some time, and then this book is basically just a compilation of the personal exchanges between Bob Cohen and Prabhupada and the discussions they had. And interestingly, the title came, and you can read it in the introduction, purely by chance. I believe it was Bob's wife that was saying, I think if you're compiling all these questions and answers, why not call the book Perfect Question, Perfect Answers? Because the idea is that these questions that have been asked in this book are kind of like a foundation of most questions that spiritualists ask, to some degrees, to some variation. And he personally Bob Cohen found that Prabhupada was able to give the perfect answers. Who is Prabhupada? So, how many people know him? I'm just trying to, okay. So just Anjan, okay. So I guess just a little very brief, quick whistle-stop tour of Prabhupada as a person. As you can tell from his skin color, etc., he's of Indian origin. And he was a very stout devotional person from childhood. But he met a spiritual guru, a spiritual teacher, at some point in his life. And he found that he had such great purity that Abhay Charan, as his AC stands for Abhay Charan, as Abhay Charan saw this purity, he was like, okay, this is the person that I want to give my life to. This is the person I want to dedicate my life to. And his spiritual master, or his guru, had basically told him that whenever you get time, do two things: print books and spread the word of God in English. And in order to fulfill that mission of spreading the word of God in English, at the age of 69, as we were talking about, he traveled to the West. Not just to Europe, but he came first to US. Not to anywhere in US, but to New York. And he started his mission not anywhere in New York, but in the Boweries. Boweries in the 1960s. For those who don't know the place in the 1960s, full of, what would you say, acid heads, full of hippies, people who are just like all day, every day, intoxicated, having illicit activities on the street, all these things, right? All these terrible, terrible things that you might think like, there's no way a spiritual movement can start there. It started there. Because that's what he set out to do. He set out to say that love of God is available for everyone, no matter where you're from, no matter what your background is. As in Christianity, you have the saying, hate the sin, not the sinner. He recognized that all these people are inherently able to love God, but for whatever reason, they're engaged in activities that isn't conducive to them loving God. But if they develop the taste of loving God, then all these habits will go away. And we find that, fast forward, many of the leaders of this movement are those very people who once used to be hippies. Srila Prabhupada would say he turned the hippies into happies. So, So that's Prabhupada. And what did he really do, right? Did he just come to New York and that's it? He wrote many, many books that you can see here. If I had my tablet, I'd write. So this one here, Bhagavad Gita as it is, the one that I've kind of mentioned, and I'll show a snippet of it on screen as well. It has 700 verses. So I don't know what the penguin is like. I think it's just passages, right? You've just got passages. So within the passage, you probably have 1 or 2, maybe 3 verses in each passage. But there's 700 verses in that. Then there's Srimad Bhagavatam, which is 18,000 verses. And then Chaitanya Charitamrita is about 11,000 verses. So he didn't just write these down. What he did was he did something which was profound at the time. Like now you have many people copying that format of what he's done. But what he did was profound because with those 3 specific literatures, he gave us a format like this. The first one here, like you can see, is the original Sanskrit text. So all of the literature that Srila Prabhupada gave us is not his version of it. He gave us from the ancient texts. He got the original texts, because it would be written down many times. So he found the original text and he gave us the Devanagari, it's called, right? So the original text in Sanskrit. Then the second thing he did was he transliterated it into Romanized characters so that people like you and me can read it. I can't read the Devanagari text, but I can read the Romanized text. So like this one says, Sanjaya vacha evam tvarishe kesham gudakesha parantapa na yotsya iti govindam uktva tushnim papuvaha. So there's accents and so on, but they have a specific dialect to say them in. Then this next one is something profound again. He gave us synonyms or word-to-word translation of each of the words so that we can understand what the language is actually saying. When we translate from English to French or English to Arabic or Arabic to English, you can't just go word to word because then it just sounds gibberish. So here he's given us the word to word meaning so that we can construct the actual understanding of the verse ourselves. So we can then say, actually, yes, the way he's translated it is authentic. Because if you miss out the word to word and you go from the Romanized to the translation, unless you know Sanskrit, you're not going to be able to understand what is actually being said. It's like saying, somebody speaks to me in French and I don't know the French language. Well, if he says that what he's told me means this in English, I just have to accept him for it. For all I know, he's basically calling me a stupid fool and idiot. And he's saying, oh, I'm calling you very beautiful, very handsome, and all these things.
Depends on the vibration.
That
The word.
would be a lot of literature to have written.
Right? So then he's given us a translation so we can read actually the Sanskrit in terms of understanding English. And then this purport is again another profound thing that Prabhupada did. Purport is basically the commentary. And it's not just his commentary. He would read, if I just go back, you can see here, he's reading a book. And in other pictures you'll see he'll have many stacks of books around him. Because he's reading the commentaries from like 10 to 20 different spiritual teachers from the past. He's reading through their translations, their commentaries, and then giving it to us in a succinct way. He's bringing all of that wisdom, all that knowledge into one purport for us. And how do we know this is authentic? Because there's a phenomena of something called disciplic succession. This idea that if we want to test whether something is true, then the word of God has to come from the original word of God. If I say I'm telling you something which is the word of God, but it's actually just something I've made up, or Xavier's told me, Xavier, I keep going back to Xavier.
I like Xavier.
Okay.
It's good.
Cool. Or Xavier's told me, and I'm saying, yeah, this is the word of God. Well, where did Xavier get it from? Did he get it from somewhere which comes from God? So here you see that in the Vedic tradition we have Krishna, who is God, and I'll talk more about Krishna and how his thing is God, at the top, and he imparts the wisdom to different personalities. And if we follow one of those trees down, then we can see in the Bhagavad Gita, in one of the introduction pages, you can see the whole lineage that follows through from Krishna to down here, Srila Prabhupada. So we can understand it's authentic because, number one, the wisdom is given down in a chain. So it's not that Prabhupada has given his own version of the truth. He's given the version that he's learnt from the teachers. And those teachers have learnt it from their teachers, etc., etc. Like that, trace it back up to Krishna. The second thing is, that was the second one. The first one was authentic givers of wisdom. This idea that they're representing the chain as it is. They're not giving their own version of it. They're not saying, okay, the chain says this, but actually it's meant to be like this. They're giving it as it is. And second is that it's passed down.
Some question. So, this chain goes via Madhvacharya, correct?
Mhm.
So when you take the chain via Shankaracharya, is the transliteration the same or different?
So what you find in the phenomenon, so when all of these four trees, they all have their own, like, obviously additions in terms of commentaries and stuff. Generally, you find translations are the same, generally speaking, because it's the same, the Vedic text is the same. But then the way to present and understand the text is different in each tree. And so what Prabhupada would do is he'd read it from this strain, but also he has read like other schools of thoughts in terms of their understanding, because when you're listening to an authentic source, you find that the conclusions are the same. Or as I put it here, the principles are preserved. The principles are the same, even if the details vary slightly. And so what Prabhupada expertly did, and a lot of the spiritual teachers would expertly do, is understand what is the principle in loving God and what's the detail in loving God, because the principle is preserved in a timeless way. But the details need to be adjusted based on time, place, circumstance. Because we live in a modern era. We live in a different era to those of 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Therefore, the way the details work can't stay the same. But the principle of what matters stays the same. Like, for example, this idea of God is our supreme well-wisher. That's a principle, that God is our well-wisher. But the detail may be that, okay, he's our well-wisher, so in the olden days, in thousands of years ago, where personalities are very, very advanced and they have many elevated powers, let's put it that way, then the way that friendship, the way that well-wisher aspect comes into play may look very different to what it does now. And when we look into spiritual inquiry, broadly speaking, especially for theistic philosophies, there's three general concepts that people often inquire about. One is God, or Bhagavan. Second is bhakti, or the spiritual practice itself, or the process. And the third is the bhakta, or the spiritual aspirant. So I often say that when you're looking at spiritual life from a theistic point of view, there's me, there's God, and there's the relationship between us. So there's me, who's the spiritual aspirant, there's God, and then there's the practice or the relationship between us. And when we have questions in a spiritual atmosphere, we find that our questions orient around one or two or all three of these aspects, because that's the way we grow in our spiritual life. There's no use me asking, oh, what was on Netflix tonight, if I'm trying to grow in my spiritual life and trying to develop my relationship with God. I'll be asking something in relationship to my practice, to me and my situation, that can help me connect to God. And so the very first topic that's discussed in PQPA is Krishna, the all-attractive, this idea of God. In the other chapters of this book, mostly the practice and the devotee or the practitioner is basically discussed. But in the first chapter, it's purely about who is God and why is Krishna the all-attractive. And when we think of God, we might have different questions, right? So first one is there even such a thing as God? Anybody have that question? Yeah? Okay. Then there is what is God? Right? Like, what sort of thing is he? Is it even a he? Is it a she? Is it an it?
Is it light?
Is it light? So is God an energy or a person? How can I know God? Maybe you've understood, okay, yes, God exists. From the first questions, you've got those answered. But how can I know God? Do I just believe what somebody's saying on the street? Like, yes, I am God.
That sometimes doesn't work well.
I think most of the time.
Yeah, all the time.
All the
It never
time.
works well.
Please follow us. Okay, I guess. You want me to follow? I'll follow.
And how can I relate to God? Because if God is our well-wishing best friend, if God is our protector, our carer, our father, then how can I develop my relationship with God? So I have a lot of these questions, and what we see in this book, actually, a lot of these do get answered in some way, shape, or form. Or there is a foundational understanding, but hopefully through the course, through the discussions, we can try and get these answered, or any questions we may have. But before we start going into the topics of the book properly, I think one thing I want to do is go through different processes of how we understand the knowledge that we do, how we acquire knowledge. Because we all get knowledge in different ways, but they're broadly categorized in 3 ways. One is pratyaksha, which is direct sense perception. I can see something, so I can understand it. I can see that there's a camera there, I can see there's a phone there, so I can understand that that object exists. Anuman, which is logic and reasoning. This idea that, okay, there's a phone there, I can't see the other side of the screen, but I'm assuming because it's pointed towards me, it's recording.
You assume correctly.
Or more philosophically speaking, that A is true, B is also true, therefore C must also be true. It's the idea of deduction or something like that. But then the third one is shabda, hearing from authentic and credible authority. A lot of people struggle with this very, very much. This idea that, okay, somebody's saying something, it's written down somewhere, therefore I just have to accept that it's true. But I can't do that. I can't just accept something true just because it's written somewhere. But the reality is we do that a lot in life. Now, the interesting thing is that if you look at the first two, pratyaksha and anuman, this idea of sense perception or logic and reasoning, we can see that it's very, very dangerous because it's based on our own self. It's described in the literatures that we have 4 defects, 4 issues with ourselves. We make mistakes. How many of us don't make mistakes? And if you don't put your hand up saying that I make a mistake, then you made a mistake. Second is that we fall prey to illusion. We think something's there, but it's not. Or the classic, I'm sure everybody's seen this on one of their social media scrolls at some point in their life. Like there's, I don't know, the one that comes to my mind is there's a van that has a picture of a car and it looks like, wait, what? It's an actual car, but then it's like, it just goes past. And it's like, wait, what? It just looked like a painting or something like that. And our senses can deceive us. But then logic and reasoning can also deceive us. Because we're looking at something thinking, okay, how much can we extrapolate? Well, we can only extrapolate based on the experiences and the knowledge we already have. And therefore, how much are we going to extrapolate? 1%, 10%? There's a common joke that is used in spiritual circles within our community about Mr. Frog. Frog in the well. There were 2 frogs. They were living in a well. And one frog was like, I'm going to go and explore what the Pacific Ocean is like. So the frog jumps out, finds the Pacific Ocean, and is like, I need to tell my friend, I need to tell my friend. So he goes back into the well and goes, guess what? The Pacific Ocean is massive. And so the other frog is thinking, okay, I've not seen it, but how big is it? Maybe like twice this well? No, bigger. Okay, 3 times. There's no way it's bigger than 3 times this well. No, even bigger. Okay, max 5 times, you know. Because all he's known his whole life is the well, the size of the well. So he can't think much beyond the size of the well when he's thinking about something bigger. But how big is the Pacific Ocean? Or like millions of times the size of the well, right? I don't know how big it is. So those 2 are very, very full of fault. As classic examples. Flat Earth theory. I look over across the land, I look over across the sea, it goes land, sea, and then so the Earth must be flat. I don't know if there's an internal joke on that, but
Probably save it for
okay.
another time.
Okay.
Another time. We would
Right.
like
It's a long story.
Okay. Or the atomic model. Every couple of years it changes. Why? Because our understanding, our tools, etc. changes, and therefore we're like, we thought it was this, and now it's actually something different. And every couple of years science changes like that. Because our understanding of the world changes based on the more we understand and the more we're able to bring out in terms of tools and technology. It's constantly changing.
It has not changed since 1926.
The quantum, I think they're still stuck
Actually,
there.
we're still stuck
in
there. But if you see, like 1807 to 1897, it took 90 years for them to get to that point,
Okay.
right?
Where is Einstein here, though?
I don't think he had an atomic model.
Huh?
I don't think he had an atomic
He did
model.
not.
I don't think
He
so.
did have that time-space equation, though.
Yeah, that's different. This is purely about the atomic model.
Oh, atomic, okay.
But yeah, the same thing there, right? Any scientific model you go for, something changes every couple of years or every century, if you want to say. But what that basically means is that even with Schrodinger's model, how can we have faith that that is the perfect model of the atom? We can't, because history shows that it's developed, it's grown. It's not saying that it's incorrect, but it might not be representative of the absolute truth of the atomic model. But then when we look at Shabda, this idea of looking at authoritative sources, when it comes to spirituality, we question it very much. But when it comes to life in general, we accept it very, very much. The teacher that taught you A equals A and B equals B. Which child is challenged? That is not A, that's a B. We don't do that, right? We say, show me, prove to me that this exists. Well, did that child ask the teacher to prove that this is a B and not an A?
Just accept it.
We just accept it. But how can we accept it? We can only accept it if we feel that the person has an authority, the person is authentic, or what they're representing is authentic.
It's like parents to children.
Yeah,
Once you
right.
hit the age of the parent, you realize
We accept. Yeah.
we know as much as they knew at the time.
Yeah. And so when it comes to spirituality, we often question it. But actually, we rely on Shabda very much. Even with most things we know, we rely on Shabda. Did we go and sit on the space station that NASA sent out to the moon? No, we accept the fact that they've presented photographs or presented research, etc., that this must be true. They must have done this. But even in science, there is many, many cases where people have won awards in science, and then 10, 20 years later they find out actually they just bluffed the results. But we accept that what they've presented is truth. Happens a lot. And when it comes to Vedic knowledge, there's a reason why we accept Vedic knowledge as truth. Because this is just a snapshot of the high-level headers of what the Vedic knowledge can present to us. Things like, if I just go here, let's see. If I go Jyotish, which is astronomy. If anybody's had astronomy or astrology, etc. done. All of this is based on Vedic maths or Vedic science. A lot of these are Vedic sciences. So you've got something like Ayurveda, if you know, which is the Vedic art of medicine. You've got something called Dhanurved, which is the Vedic art of fighting. So like this, you've got different things. Or here you may be used to like the Patanjali yoga system or the Sankhya philosophies. This idea of looking at the metaphysics of the world. There's different things here. Don't know if there's anything else. But yeah, then you've got the standard Vedas and stuff. Then you've got, Dharma Sutras, which are defined as law books. It's like this, the Vedic knowledge, Veda literally actually means knowledge. That's the definition of Veda in English when you translate it into English. And so Vedic knowledge is basically a body of knowledge which is stemming from absolute truth. And if you tested a lot of these, people use Ayurveda today as a natural remedies for health. And it works because it's individualized and it's a science. If you wanted, I know there's, The Art of War or something like that from, I think, yeah. But if you look at a lot of the principles there, it's found in the Dharmaved. Because all of it is a science. Everything around us is a science, and that science is presented in the Vedic literature. And what's really interesting about Vedic literature is that most of the Vedic literature is described around like 95-97% is about the material world and material sciences. Only a small portion, about like 3 to 5%, is about spiritual science. Which is really interesting when you think of it, because here I am trying to speak to you guys about spiritual topics. And I'm saying that where the spiritual topics come from is actually primarily, the body of knowledge is primarily material. But it's a bit like trusted brands. Which brand do you trust?
Slide,
Yes.
The previous slide, the tantras, are they like more like practices, or they is spoken by Lord Shiva? Are they like practices?
Tantras are the prayers, they are practices also, but yeah. It's very, very interesting. One for another conversation.
All right, okay.
What do you want?
We do not practice anything related to that, just saying. But like, if you just pick, like, I don't know, let's pick a brand that you trust.
Like Google.
None.
Google. Okay.
None.
You don't trust any?
No.
Okay.
That's why I gave a little
Okay.
These are the trusted ones. So
DuckDuckGo.
It's just what I found online, but I know. But let's pick Google. Let's say we trust Google, right?
which we do every day. We ask. Google
Yeah, that's true.
questions every day.
We do trust it
I
to some
suspend
degree.
my disbelief.
But imagine Google then came out with some new technology. Let's say they decided that they were going to invest in cars. People who trust Google will be like, okay, I'm using Google for this. Their car will be amazing too. Or Samsung, for a massive example, right? I don't know what they started off with. Maybe phones or TVs, I don't know what they started off with. But then they expanded into other technology. It's like, oh, it's Samsung. Must be a good quality. Must be a good quality.
Washers.
Right. We have everything in Samsung these days. You trust the brand based on your experience. And then based on that experience, you're trusting the brand in other things that maybe it's never even ventured into before. And if you go back to the Vedic knowledge, that's basically how Vedic knowledge functions. If you go back in history. The fact that the material sciences work, and they still work today, when they're presenting spiritual science, you can have confidence that it's going to work.
Even though it's material, the spiritual part of it is as well can be
Right.
just as beneficial.
Right. So you may not see and understand how the spiritual science works, but the fact that you have all of this wealth of knowledge that supports material science and works, you can then trust the spiritual science aspect of it. And just a little bit about the language, right? So Sanskrit, this Devanagari text. Yeah, John, could you read that for us, please? Sanskrit, oftentimes scholars define as the mother of all languages. Some also argue, I think it's Indo-European as well. But I mean, generally speaking, scholars around the world identify Sanskrit as the mother of all languages. And then the literature format is called Devanagari. And Devanagari literally means Deva Nagari. It's the language or the words of the demigods, of the Devas. So with that, it's basically saying that it's coming from a higher plane in terms of the language itself. And every word has a meaning in Sanskrit. Just think about that for a second, right? Every word has a meaning in Sanskrit. So I don't know what John means, but John will have a meaning behind it. But when you look at any Sanskrit text, every word will have a meaning and it represents that meaning as well.
Let me ask Google.
Go for it. And because of the fact that every word has a meaning, every name that's given is according to the qualities of the personality. So you were named John by your parents.
Yes.
How did they come up with that name?
By J.R. from Dallas. Because my biological father loved the show J.R.
And do you represent that personality?
Absolutely not, but I do represent the personality of what is John. And
Right.
I was actually supposed to be named James.
Cowboy.
I'd be cowboy, but I choose not to be.
Okay.
But so it can be done in the ways of was I named by my father or by my mother, and if I take the essence of what my name would have been, which is James, I stick by John because it's what I was naturally given,
Right.
and that's all I hear. So
Fair enough.
vibrations.
So interestingly, if you were given a Sanskrit name based on the science, then your name would represent who you are as a person. Your personality, your characteristics, your traits.
Would I have been a different personality if I would have been named James instead of John? That's
True,
it's-
maybe.
It's a question.
And when we look at these, look at the fact that every word has a meaning and that every name is representing the personality as well. It's not just a name for the personality, but the personality is embodying the name as well. Then we find that God, or the Sanskrit term Bhagavan, which represents God, also has the same thing. And there's a great Muni, a great Parashara Muni. He's a great saint from many thousands of years ago. And he analyzed the term Bhagavan to understand what does it actually mean? What does it actually represent? And therefore, what does God actually represent? And it's described that there are 6 opulences that make one Bhagavan. First one is Aishwarya, or wealth. This idea that they possess all wealth. Second is vitality. They possess all health. Fame, beauty, knowledge, detachment. Somebody who's termed Bhagavan will have all of these aspects, will be full in all of these 6 opulences. And what you see here is that most people around the world are searching for growth or development in at least one of these aspects. They make it one of their aims or one of what they stand for in life to grow in these areas. Like, for example, if you look at celebrities, why did they become a celebrity? Some will be because they want the name. Some will be because they want the beauty. Some will be because they want the wealth. When we look at our own lives, what are we striving for? There'll be an aspect of one or more of these 6 aspects too. And so somebody who is termed Bhagavan or God must be full in all these 6 aspects. Who in the world can we say is full of wealth? Even the richest man doesn't have all the wealth in the world. Who in the world can you say has all the beauty? Even the most, I don't know, Miss Universe doesn't have all the beauty. So God is somebody who has all these 6 aspects. And based on that, we see that there are different names given to God around the world, right? Like Jehovah in Christianity. And Jehovah literally means Supreme Being. Then you've got Allah, which is God Almighty. And you see, there's all representative of the opulences that exist. And then in the Vedic literature, in the Vaishnava philosophy, you have Krishna, which means all attractive. Now, if you think about the name Krishna being all attractive, and if I just go back, who can be more attractive than somebody who is full and complete in all 6 of these opulences? Somebody who's full of wealth, people who are striving to try and be rich in the world, they'll be attracted to the one who has all the wealth. All attractive, Krishna. Somebody who wants health, it could be in the form of physical health, could be in the form of sexual health, or whatever it is. They'd be attracted to somebody who has all that health. knowledge. So many people just trying to amass lots and lots of knowledge, read lots and lots of books. And they look at other people and think like, yes, I know more than this person. I know more. Oh, this person knows more. I need to read more. I need to do more. But who can be more attractive than somebody who has all of the knowledge? And the term Krishna encompasses this idea that Krishna means all attractive. And therefore, when we talk about Krishna, we are referring to Krishna, who is God, Bhagavan, because he is complete in all of these opulences. And if you were to look at any of the literature, you see this is one of the standard pictures in our spiritual culture. This person here is Krishna, a blue boy. And now you might be questioning, wait, blue boy? Okay, that's one for another day. But but a boy, I'm not attracted to boys.
Why blue?
Why blue? Kid, I mean, he doesn't look that attractive maybe, right? But this is obviously a depiction. It's often described that pictures are like, was it mirrors or windows to the spiritual world, because they depict. An artist has an excellent ability to capture the imagination, the creativity, the literature that they've just read, to present that in a way that other people can appreciate and see and get a glimpse. And then this here on the right hand side are just all these personalities, and we'll call them devotees or spiritual perfectionists who have basically managed to make it to the spiritual world to associate with Krishna. But this then raises its own question, because I've just been talking about Krishna, the name, and now I just brought up Krishna, a person. So is he a person? What sort of person is he? In something called the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a nice verse given. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yat jnanam advayam brahmete paramatmete bhagavaniti shabdyate. Says that learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So one of the literatures that I showed in the Vedic knowledge body, and one of the ones that Srila Prabhupada translated for us, it comes in that, in 1 to 11, basically says, Canto 1, which is the first volume of books, Chapter 2, verse number 11, this is given. And it's basically saying that God has three aspects to his existence. One is Brahman, second is Paramatma, and the third is Bhagavan. So what are these three aspects? So the first one, Brahman, is the impersonal energy. It's basically this idea that it's an energy, that God is an energy. You know, there's some philosophies that say once we die, we merge into the energy, we all become one. That exists in the philosophy, but one aspect of God. The second aspect is Paramatma, the God in the heart. You know, we're talking about the super soul, the one that guides from within. That's the second aspect. He's a localized version. He's with each and every one of us. It's described that we all are a soul, which I've mentioned on Tuesday. And next to the soul in the heart is also the super soul, which is the Paramatma aspect of God, within each and every one of us. And he's personally looking out for the actions and the intentions and everything that's going on in our individual lives. Because he's personal now. But then even more personal than that is Bhagavan, God the person. A person who isn't just sitting inside the heart, but a person that we can actually relate to, that we can actually, if we're advanced enough, associate with, speak to, connect with. How can we understand this? We give an analogy of a train, a steam train. How can all three of these be true? Imagine, or let's say there's a story where there's a mother and the mother has 3 kids. And the mother's like, oh, your dad's going to come on the train. And the kids are like, the 3 children are like, what's a train? I've never seen a train before. I want to know what a train is. And so mom's like, okay, come to the train station, I'll show you what a train is. So they all run behind the mom, holding her hand, or etc., and go to the train station, and now they're just waiting. They're just waiting for the train. So now the train's going to come around the corner. right? It's got a bend, you know, typical. I don't know actually if you have that in the US, at least in UK. Okay, cool. Trains do go around bends. So this is a steam train. And all three children are just staring at the train track, waiting. Mum is saying, like, the train will come from that direction. Okay, the train is coming. The first thing that they see is sound, smoke, and light, because they're just behind the trees, behind the bushes. And then the children are, oh, that's the train. So one of the children goes, I know what a train is, I know what a train is, goes and rushes to Mum and goes, I know what a train is. A train is sound, smoke, and light. Was the child incorrect? No.
It's part of it.
It's part of, right? But the other two boys stayed looking, staring. There must be more. So then the train is now coming around the corner. Now you can see the train. Sees the carriages, the compartments. I know what a train is, I know what a train is. It's sound, smoke, light, but also it's got carriages and compartments. Is that incorrect? No. That's a more complete version. But then the third child waits until the train comes, docks up at the station, and then he sees that, oh, there's people coming in and out of the train. He goes inside the train, he sees that there's seating, there's tables, and so now he sees that the train is sound, smoke, light. It is carriages and compartments, but it's also a carrier for people who are going from one place to another. So who's correct in their understanding?
One.
All of them. But we see that progressively, the second child and then eventually the third child has a more complete understanding of the train. And so in the same way, when you look at Vedic philosophy as a whole, Vedic literature as a whole, like you've read Upanishads, probably other ones as well, you'll see that there's different aspects of God described, that, oh, God is the energy, God is just the super soul in the heart, God is a person. Well, when you consolidate, when you understand these, then what you see is that all three aspects are true, but it's described that this aspect is perfect, this is more perfect, and this is most perfect. They're all perfectly true, but to different degrees of perfection.
Seems like the patience of one and understanding that way you can hear the full message instead of running with whatever they hear currently. Just going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, is God a person? Yes, God is a person. Is God an energy? Yes, God is an energy. But the more complete understanding is God is a person, because the person God encompasses the energy of God and the localized aspect of God.
The question I have is, let's say non-dual, right? So when you have a person God, wouldn't it become duality?
How would it become duality?
The non-dual essentially means that our soul and the outer energy, what we call God, is one, basically. That's non-dual, what I understand. But if you are actually projecting God as a person that you pray to, that becomes non-dual. That becomes dual, duality.
So repeat the last part. If you...
No, I'm saying is like, what we believe is that non-dual theory where God resides inside you and God is, the same God is part of Brahman is outside. That's non-duality, which it says on your slide. But if you believe in God as a person, then you're going into this situation where there's another person actually there, which is nobody knows. It is you're delving into suppositions and imaginations because
Right.
you're imagining a person, a human form, and a duality which no one can prove, right? So that's my point.
Okay. Okay, point taken. So let's go with that basis. I'll skip the Sanskrit. Oops. And go to the next part, because I'm not ignoring the question, but this will help. This will lead into it. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 7th chapter, it's mentioned, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mine which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So when we talk about non-dual, there is this understanding that we're talking about is all encapsulated into one. It's non-different from each other. But if we understand non-dual in the sense that the energy of God and God are one, then it's still non-dual. Because let's say I'm a businessman and I have a business. If I talk about my business, is that really different to speaking about me as a businessman? In one sense it is, because the business is separate from me, but I am a businessman and that is my business. So it's actually still a part of me that I'm describing.
The heart and the person. So I cannot say that I love Rabbit's heart, but I do not love Rabbit. It wouldn't make any sense. So again, for me to say I love Krishna, I love God, and Krishna is such the part of God, and such a beautiful part, raising vibrations and teaching us about that, teaching us how to lift the hearts of people as we move, and how to become that. And with that lesson, we learn the extension of God through recognizing God as it is words are everything, as we know. So I understand to say a person, God, to me feels strange rolling off the tongue, as well as strange for the ear to hear. But I understand the principle. It would be a tough sell at a dawa table.
Yeah, so the other thing to separate out is when we're talking about person God, we're not talking about person as in he has the physical form like we do with, if I cut my finger off, blood, etc., will ooze out. When we talk about person God, he does have a form. And that's a conversation for another day if we want, because there's something called the Isha Upanishad. I don't know have you read the Isha Upanishad? Okay. But it talks about mind-boggling things about how God is present but isn't present, how he's on the phone but he isn't on the phone, how he's walking but he's not walking, all these different facets.
I'm
Yes.
not trying to roll with it.
Yeah.
I had mentioned we'll carry this on after.
Yeah.
You're doing excellent. I'm sorry.
no,
I
that's fine.
apologize.
That's fine. So, so God has a form, but it's a spiritual form. It's not a form with the blood, etc., that we have. So yeah, I'll keep that there for now. When we talk about Krishna's energies, so yes, Krishna is a person, and the material world, like we just read in the Bhagavad Gita verse, is his inferior energy. And then the living entities like us, we are the superior energy of Krishna. Now that's an interesting distinction that's being made, because what it means is that we have tendencies of superior nature. And those tendencies, as we'll see in the later chapters, form part of why we're here. They form part of the practice on how we need to go back, how we can connect back to Krishna. And what is the aspect? The aspect that if something is superior, then it can dominate the inferior, right?
In a sense, the more you know, the more you have over other people,
Okay.
I would say. Knowledge is power.
Right? Knowledge is power, but even if you look at physical strength,
Yes.
I'm puny, but John is massive. John could literally put his hand on me and I get crushed.
We're all equal. So I understand.
We understand the point, right? So superiority can take advantage or have control or proprietorship over the inferior. And that's why we have the ability to manipulate what's around us. Because we're of the superior energy. Why superior? Because we've got consciousness, we've got thinking capacity, etc. And it's described that we have the same qualities as God, but in a minute quantity. Because God can control. God is a supreme controller, but we're minute controllers. God has proprietorship, but he has supreme proprietorship, and we have small proprietorship. And even that, sometimes we don't. We think we have proprietorship over our house, over our body, but I'm lifting this pointer up. Any second, my brain could go freeze, phew, I lose control, right? It could happen. So we sometimes think we have proprietorship or control, but just such a small degree that may not even be present. So, how does this connect to this idea of God or this idea of spirituality? So one thing is understanding that there is the world, which is an energy of God. We are also energies of God. We're all parts and parcels, as described, of God, but of the superior nature. We can understand that if we want to connect to God, then what we have to do is let go of trying to be the superior energy in relation to this material world. Because God is our supreme. Therefore, we have to become instruments, or as Xavier was saying, align our moral compass with that of God's. But we're so absorbed in controlling over the material nature or manipulating the material energy around us that even between Tuesday and now, how many people manage to focus their time and energy and consciousness on spiritual sound vibrations or on reading or on something like that? Okay, to some degree, right? How do you go a week? Could you manage a week?
Make it happen.
A month?
My best.
That's how I live.
That's how you live. Oh, that's nice. That's amazing.
On the situation that the people that interact with me in my life,
Right.
The information I take in, whether or not it's good or bad or within itself, just information.
But then also you see there's an internal struggle as well, right? Sometimes, depending on the degree that you're associated. If you're coming from a background where most of your evenings you've just watched Netflix, and now you're going, oh, I need to do something spiritual. It's hard.
I come to
It's hard.
I did say I was going to watch Netflix
Yeah.
instead of King. Tuesday.
Yeah. But it's hard, right?
It is.
And that's where spiritual taste comes in. This idea of spiritual taste. That if we want to connect to God, if we want to connect to Krishna, if we want to advance in our spiritual practices, then what's the best way to grow or advance in something? It's by having a taste for that so you feel more inclined towards that process or that thing than something else. Think of, I've got a picture of a baby with a toy. How do you get the toy from the baby?
You don't, that baby will not like you. Trust me.
Distracts the baby.
We're both fathers.
Distract the
so
baby.
it's,
Yeah.
How do you distract the baby?
Different.
You give something else, right?
Yeah, somehow.
You give
No, no, no,
something
you-
that the
you-
baby's like, this is more interesting, this is more valuable. I can let go of this thing in favor of this thing.
Yeah.
And we're all big babies.
No, absolutely.
So how do we develop spiritual taste?
You get something that intrigues us.
Yeah. So we find that the whole world moves on taste. We're calling it taste. But this idea that this is attractive to me, I'm holding on to it. Until we find something more attractive, then we're willing to let that go and cling on to this. We might not immediately let go. Maybe we'll like open our pinky finger a bit, and then like second finger, and then like, okay, now I'm ready, like, then I'll cling on. But that's the idea. If we want to get attracted to something of a higher nature, of a spiritual nature, we have to lose the taste for the lower natures by two things. One is we recognize it for what it is, which we'll talk about tomorrow. Or the other thing is be attracted to the thing you want to cling on to. So as you said, find something that attracts you in that place. Could be the kirtan, could be the prasadam, the food, could be the spiritual talks, could be the reading.
That muffin was really good. Icing, I still remember. If you had some more, I would love to. Because of the muffins, but I'll stay for the spiritual way.
Yeah, the pumpkin.
Absolutely.
That
Was
was
it
amazing.
pumpkin?
Pumpkin
Oh
was
goodness, I didn't even know. I just like
delicious.
it. Sorry, but please.
No. It's true though, right? Like people come for different reasons. Some people may come because they like the talk. Some people come because they like the kirtans. Some people come because they just want to hang around with people who are spiritual. We all have something that attracts us, which is why you guys are here.
You mentioned association.
Association. So you like the association,
A, yeah, A, B, C, D.
right? So you like connecting with people. And so what we see is that if we want to grow in spiritual life, we need to find a way to lose the taste in the material stuff, which isn't helpful in our spiritual life. And we talk more about that tomorrow. but then also get attracted to stuff that's of higher nature, whether it's kirtan, food, the prasadam, the talk, or whatever it is. And one thing that we have to always remember, though, is that actually everyone is attracted to Krishna in some way. Like I spoke earlier about how the 6 opulences of Bhagwan, of God, and people are attracted. Now you might be thinking, well, what about those who aren't practice spiritual life? How are they attracted to God? Well, actually they are. Because if I go back, remember, even the material energy, material world, is God's energy. So they're attracted to God's energy, which is still an attraction to God, albeit indirectly. But if we want to be spiritualists, if we want to grow in our spiritual life, we want to go from being attracted to the indirect route to the direct route, because that's where we find the relationship. I'm going to use John and Xavier as classic examples here. You have a personal relationship, which is why you connect so nicely. But imagine your relationship was no longer personal and any of your interactions had to go through me. How connected would you feel to Xavier or to John?
I would feel more connected to you.
You'd feel more connected to me. So in the same way, if my whole life I'm attracted to Krishna's external energy, the lovely mobile phone, and scrolling social media.
Don't lie about it, it's not lovely.
Not the phone.
But we have the taste, right? We all have the
Always
taste.
finished. That's why I'm trying so much to not look at the vibrations that keep on coming. I was like,
And that's why silent is a beautiful feature that they have introduced.
but my phone tends to just go vibration.
I know people who like have it on vibrate in the bag, and it's like every time it buzzes, it's like, I need to go check. I need to go check.
It's that existential, I have to check who, it must be so important right now.
And then it's like just a random message, and it's like,
Yes.
you check it, you tick it off, and then you reply back, and it's like, it was so important. Oh wait, no, it wasn't.
Was it worth the time? No.
Right.
Present moment.
Was it worth the anxiety? But yeah, so we see, we all have taste, or most of us have taste for Krishna's external energy, the inferior energy, the material energy, which is why we're struggling to develop the taste for the interior energy, the superior energy, the spiritual energy. And so we all are attracted to Krishna in some way, some directly, some indirectly. And lastly, this is not in the book actually, but it's very much related. This comes from the Katha Upanishad.
Like that.
So what this is basically an analogy of us in the form of a chariot. I love this diagram so much, but I use this literally every time I need to talk about this. I use this. I just love it. Anyway, so there's 5 horses here, which are your 5 senses. Then you've got the mind, the reins, which is your mind. Then you've got the driver, the chariot driver, who is the intelligence. And then you've got the passenger, which is us, the soul. Now, I'm assuming most of you have ridden or rode, whatever the American version is, on chariots before, or horses.
I'm allergic to horses.
Oh, okay.
You'll ride on the dog.
Yes.
Okay. So you've had some sort of experience of something like this.
A donkey,
Not five.
not a horse.
They have those
Not-
things
No,
in
5, that's
Central
fine.
Park.
Yeah, Central Park is there. So at least you can see them in Central Park. If you want to go, you can
Only
see
two,
them.
I think there are only one.
Mm, 2.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes two.
Chariot, but it was on with a bike.
Bike.
Person.
Okay, like let's just pretend the bike is. So 5 horses are our 5 senses. Now what would happen if we just let the senses do what they want? The nose is going to go, I want to smell that nice flower. The ears are going to go, oh, there's some nice music going on over there, let me go over there. The tongue is going to go, oh my gosh, that muffin, I need to go back to that place.
Not backwards.
And the hand is going to be like, oh, I really want to, I don't know.
Grab the muffin.
Yeah, okay, whatever, you know. So the horses will just go in random directions.
ADHD.
Right. It will just go in random directions. But the way you control the senses is by having reins attached to them, which is the mind.
Okay.
The mind accepts and rejects. The tongue wants to go for the muffin. No, no muffin. You've had too many today.
Well,
Or it might say yes. One more doesn't hurt.
what I ate today.
But the mind's function, when we look at it, is just to accept or reject things. Just goes, okay, yes or no. It's binary, actually. I mean, yes, there's a whole background. The mind stores the memory, etc., etc. But when you look at its active function, it's just accept or reject. And what does it accept or reject based on? The intelligence. So you've got the driver here. The driver's holding the reins. The intelligence is saying, okay, I want the chariot to go straight then left and out the door. Well, if the intelligence is strong, it will keep the mind in control and go, I'm accepting everything that's going forward and then everything that's going left. Oh, this horse wants to turn right because it's smelt the nice flower? No, you're not allowed, you need to go left. But is that enough? Is that enough to direct our life in the way we want to direct it? Why?
Like what my
So you're just dealing with good or bad, like from your own knowledge.
Right.
purpose.
So we need purpose. We need to direct the intelligence in such a way that it takes the reins and the horses in the direction we actually want it to go. And isn't that what we do as passengers, whether it's Uber or whether it's, our friend is driving us? The personal Uber driver that's free, basically. That's you. But isn't that what happens, right? We tell the driver, I want to go this place, to this place. What happens if you just sit in the car and just go, okay, I'm just going to chill out? Well, the driver either isn't going to move, or he's going to be like, okay, there's this loony guy in the back, I'm just going to take him around the block and then just come back to the same place. It doesn't matter.
You're about to explain stagnant soul?
Not quite.
Okay.
Would you like to elaborate?
Well, I seem to be made aware on a day-to-day in communication with people as far as God goes that it's almost as though most are completely unaware of their soul at all. And of their, what do you refer to, mind, body?
The gross and subtle.
So it is also called in Hebrew nefesh, which is spirit, and in Arabic it is called ruh. And it would appear as though everybody is unaware that we function in three parts, being the soul, the spirit,
Yeah.
and the temple. So a stagnant soul, you become a meat puppet,
Yeah.
bogged down by the limitations of surface desires, and it's to no fault of anybody who is currently present. It's ingrained. It's those sins washed down through generations of people being stagnant and forgetting their way and falling off the path.
Mm.
So a stagnant soul, it sounds like you were
Okay.
on the right track.
Yeah, I guess yeah, I was going to talk about something similar, but I guess just to touch on that point, in the Vedic literature, what we have is that we've had many, many lives, because obviously reincarnation is there, and it's described that that stagnant soul, as you put it, comes from the previous lives that we've had, the many millions of lifetimes that we've been through in various forms of life. All we've done is worked based on where the horses want to go, based on the specific body we've got. And because of that, what we're used to now, where does the nose want to go? Where do the eyes want to go? Where does the hand want to go? We're conditioned in that way for lifetimes. And so our default mode of operation is to do what the senses want to do. But if we stop and think, actually, do I really want to go to the pub? The answer is no. But we do it, right? We thought we did because actually, who's getting the enjoyment? It's not the soul. It's
I don't think it's any part of us truly.
Yeah.
Alcohol is the spirit.
That's
here.
true. That is true. That's definitely true. But the perceived enjoyment the perception of enjoyment is there when you look at it from the perception of the senses, right?
But it's also perception.
Right.
It's also the
perception.
You thought you wanted this, but it's then liquid.
You were right. I do love this diagram.
But I used to work at a pub, so it's one of those things. But now going there without any type of liquid to enjoy me to be more than myself, I see that I don't fit in. I thought I wanted to. And
Right.
It's just the fact that I need something to fit in order to make myself feel.
When you
as a-
replace anything that is that with God, then you will find those people.
You find higher taste. Yeah.
Yes.
A higher taste in a better company, I would say.
Yeah.
Better company and better wisdom, because the company that I need something to expel.
There's no true wisdoms at those watering holes anyway.
Stop, are you kidding me? I learned so much in the negative aspect, but I still learned
To
something.
avoid it completely, I hope.
I still go karaoke.
Now you can karaoke on Kirtan.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was saying. I was like, you know what? There's other ways that I can sing.
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah. No, for sure. But yeah, so just going back to the diagram, and then I do want to share a joke actually, because on that point actually. So you see here, the soul is basically taking the journey, where the intelligence, if it's strong, is going to take it. But if we as a soul are going, intelligence, I want you to go in this direction, like you guys have been reading the Bhagavad Gita. I want to strengthen my intelligence with spiritual knowledge. What's going to happen to the direction of your life, to the direction where the chariot goes? It's going to go in the trajectory you want it to go. But if you just go, okay, the normal thing to do is to go to the pub, well, you're just letting the senses take control. The horses are going where it wants to go. Or the intelligence is molded in a way that it thinks that's where it wants to go. That's where the soul wants to go, the passenger wants to go. But the reality is, it's described that the soul really just wants one thing, and that is happiness, or ananda, and that happiness is only really found in its relationship with God. So yeah, that's end of first chapter and first section. I guess the whole focus was on
Please continue. Like I was saying on Tuesday, I didn't want you to finish. So last time I was like, oh man.
I don't know, we can say informally, I don't mind. But I guess the content-wise, that's finished. But the first section was purely about God. The first chapter is purely about God, trying to understand why Krishna is the name given. Because a lot of times, even when we're on the streets, I'm sure you guys have seen us on the streets, like actually that's where you met us, right? Then you see, like, we sometimes come across people, oh, like, why Krishna? Why not Coca-Cola or whatever, you know? Why this mantra? Why not another mantra? But there's a reason behind it, and there's a scientific basis based off the Vedic literature, like we spoke about. And within the Vedic literature, because of the way Sanskrit is composed, the origins of Sanskrit, Krishna, it makes the perfect name from a Vedic perspective. Now for the joke. So, you may have heard, I don't know if you've heard of this before, but once there was a circus that was just traveling around, going to places, you know, it's typical circuses that you have that go around. And they had a massive queue of people waiting to go in. But it wasn't a circus that was open for everyone. It's basically like only one person is allowed in at a time. And the experience is 5 minutes max. So everybody's queuing up, like, I've heard about this circus, it's amazing, it's amazing, it's amazing. We have to go. So everybody's queuing up to go. The first one goes in, and then he comes out, and he's like, oh my gosh, it was absolutely amazing. It was the best experience ever. You gotta go in. And then this guy is waiting like the third person in queue, right? He's like, oh my gosh, I just heard this first guy go in. When it opened, it's absolutely amazing. Okay, I can't wait. Second person goes in. And then he also comes out after 5 minutes. And he's like, it's the best thing ever. You're not gonna regret going in at all. So it's like, okay, I'm next, can't wait, like, hurry up, gods, like, let me in. So then, this guy goes in. And what happens when he's inside is that it's a dark room, and there's people that's like, oh, you're here for the circus? Bang, 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 like, they just beat him up. And then he's thinking like, hang on, but everybody had this amazing experience. I can't be the only one that says that the experience was terrible. So when he goes out, he tells the next person, it was an absolutely amazing experience.
Run away!
But he's not going to be the odd one out. Everybody else has been saying it's an amazing experience. Why is he going to say anything different? And isn't that our life?
That's right.
Everybody's saying the pub is amazing. Everybody's saying the club is amazing. Everybody's saying this is amazing. That is amazing. And everybody experiences the same thing. It's not as amazing as people may say it is. But that's our life. We often describe it as chewing the chewed. Or, we have chewing, a lot of people eat chewing gum, right? But even when the taste is gone, they continue chewing. Because they're hoping that maybe one little bite, one little chew will give a little bit of drop of that juice or whatever it is. So they just keep chewing, half an hour, and it's like, the juice is already long gone, but you're still chewing it. Parents give the same thing to their children, that you gotta grow up, you gotta do this, you gotta become a businessman, you gotta do that, so many things. Yeah. You gotta be successful in life. Look at us,
And when you don't have it, it's the moment you think you failed, but it's everybody's moment of dealing with that as it comes to them.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I hate to break it, but this is just like a circus where everybody's going through the same punishment, but nobody's willing to say that this is a terrible experience.
At least it's not physical beat up. Beat the.
Well, hopefully for most of us. For most of us,
I
it's
think
not.
if more can admit that to themselves, this place would be a lot fuller.
Yeah. So yes.
Inshallah. God willing. It
Yes.
will be.
Yeah. And that's the idea of spreading spiritual knowledge. Because when we spread it, when more people are attracted, like, I don't know how spiritual, like, John or Ralph, okay, I'm going to call you Rabbit now, because that's, like, the name that sticks in my head.
Go for it.
They are.
But I don't know, like, what your background is in terms of, like, spiritual search, but...
I grew up with one ideology. I
Mm.
always felt there was something above with all togetherness. So it was just never my.
Oh, so you came from that background, huh?
Not so much. I grew up Catholic.
Ah,
So it's just the basic fundamentals of like a teacher showing a student. I thought that's what it
Mm.
was, but I also had more of just like, it's all about God. Why is everybody separated? So it was more of like, I know there's something out there, but until I read every single Bible, I really can't have an opinion of your religion as well as you can't have an opinion of mine until you figure it out or live it. So
yeah.
there
No,
was
that's
more
true.
of just
Yeah, oftentimes I talk about this principle that if all of us developed our vertical relationship with God, really focused on strengthening that, then all of the horizontal relationships in this world become so much more easier to navigate and manage, because that vertical relationship then just flows through onto all those relationships. But sometimes when you see immature spiritualists or immature practitioners of certain religions, they think that all that matters is this vertical relationship, and then they neglect the horizontal relationships.
They
And
are,
I'm guilty of that myself.
Love the fruit and hate the tree, or they love the tree and hate the fruit.
Yeah. Yeah. But we see that's very common with immature spiritualists. When you look at the top spiritual practitioners, if you see like the spiritual gatherings and stuff, I don't know what they're called, but you see the top people in different spiritual practices, they come together. They're discussing and appreciating the wisdom available from different practices. They're not arguing, no, that's ludicrous, that's stupid, that's nonsense, that doesn't mean anything. This is the way. They're appreciating and respecting how there's a different school of thought that, how can an unlimited God have one way to connect with God?
it's like the many names. And they
Right.
all mean the same, but I love
Right. There might be a direct way, just as there will be clearly I love planes. There might be a direct flight from New York to London, but there's also indirect flights from New York to London. I could go,
pit stops.
Yeah,
What do
pit
you
stops if you want to go Formula One.
Absolutely. Change my tires, please. They're all run down. I need some more grip to this tire road of life.
How do you answer the question people ask, right? Like, if there's a God, why do we have all these problems in life? Why bad things happen to good people? Right? Like, you always ask that, people ask the basic question, why all these wars and killings and bad things happening? Like, there's no real explanation, right?
There is. So I can bring this up next week. I wasn't planning to cover it, but I can bring it up because there is an element of karma discussed. But see, it depends on the philosophy, right? And there are certain philosophies that consider that this is just one life, that we only have one life and that's it. Once we're done, we're done. We merge back into the earth and that's it, we're done.
Sand.
Percent. Now, disclaimer, I know some people may think of Christianity, but Christianity does not actually believe in one life. You may be able to attest to that. Right? People, even when you speak to Christians preachers, they keep talking about one life and then eternal damnation, etc. Yes, but eternal damnation means it's not one life. But anyway, I just dislike that phenomenon when people say that.
Alhamdulillah to that. Thank God for that.
Okay, so because eternal damnation means that you live on beyond this body and therefore there is an existence outside this body, right? So if you take philosophies that consider there's only one life, then what does that mean? That means that anything and everything that's happening in this life is contained within this one life, and therefore whatever good or bad, if you say that you deserve it, then what did you do in this one life to deserve something? Then the argument comes, well, what did the stillborn baby do? Maybe you say that, okay, the stillborn doesn't have a soul. Well, what did the child who's born in the poorest part of Africa do to deserve being born in the poor part of the world? And what did somebody born in Bill Gates's dynasty deserve, like, at birth? So one life philosophies kind of break down straight away when it comes to the question of why do bad things happen to good people. But then if you consider that actually this is one life among many lives, i.e. this is one chapter of a bigger book, then you see that, okay, maybe there's certain things that have been done in other lifetimes that implicate what we're going through in this lifetime. But then there's another dimension to it. Do we believe that we are the body, or do we believe that we're a soul? Because then we have a dimension to consider where, even if we consider there's multiple lifetimes, if you consider that we've only got one part to our identity as opposed to three, then how do we consider diseases? How do we consider all of these things? Because it's all contained again. It's all part of one existence. But then when you think of the soul, when you consider that you've got three parts of your identity, and the soul is the eternal identity, then you can see that that's what's carrying the karma from previous lifetimes. For those who don't know, karma is basically, if you know Newton's laws, then equal opposite reaction, right? This idea that if you do good to the world, you get good in return. If you do bad, you get bad reactions. If you do spiritual, you get spiritual reactions. And again, later on we discuss, but this whole idea that if we have many lifetimes, then that means we have to come back again and again and again and again and again and again. And which means we have to go through the same suffering again. It means we have to go through the same flickering happiness again. It means we might have to go and work in the pub again. And so the literatures describe that there's an out. It's a cycle. Birth, death, rebirth. It's a cycle. But we have to break out of the cycle. And how do we break out? Stay tuned tomorrow. But I often describe our life is like a goat on a farm. What happens to goats on a farm? They're always so busy in chewing their grass, the patch of grass. Every now and then they'll look up and they'll see that goat over there has been taken to the slaughterhouse. Oh, it's not me, who cares? Then another goat. Oh, I didn't like him anyway. I'm glad he's gone. Then we look up and it's like, oh, my best friend. my mum, my dad, my son. Sad. But it's not me. I gotta live on. But then comes a time where we're the ones that get taken to the slaughterhouse. We look up next and we're inside the slaughterhouse. And so, if we're a goat, we don't really think. We just go on eating the patch of grass. But we're not goats. We have intelligence. We have the ability to think and be conscious. And so, if we were in a goat's body, our business would be, how the heck do I get out of this farm?
But then how does it explain?
How does it
Still, how do
explain?
you
So when you think of bad things happening to good people, if you understand, if the philosophy you resonate with and you go with, which the Hare Krishna or the ISKCON or the Gaudiyavation philosophy is, then what you understand, or what we understand, is that we've got multiple lives and we've got multiple parts to our identity. So whatever's happening to me is a reaction of what I have done, either now, in the future, or in the past. So, but the past, the time span isn't boxed in by this one life. It spans other lifetimes. So on one dimension, you've got, okay, I'm getting reactions for whatever I've done. But on the other dimension, you've got this understanding that there's three parts to our identity: the gross body, the subtle body, and the soul.
So,
And so, God is all merciful, God is all kind, God is all these positive things. And therefore, even though we're suffering has happened on a gross level or a subtle level, but the soul is always unaffected. We feel we're affected because it's on our consciousness, which is the mind and the intelligence. But God is described in the Bhagavad Gita that God always protects us. But that protection may look different because he may or may not protect the gross body. He may or may not protect the subtle body, but he's always protecting the soul, because the journey of the soul is to connect back to Krishna, connect back to God. And it's described in the Bhagavad Gita that even if at the end of this life, you've only just scratched the surface of your spiritual path, God promises that in your next life, you'll pick up from where you left off.
that's pretty good. Wish we could look back into our past life.
Well, you could say you wish that, but would you really? If you think about it
Well,
another
I
way.
mean, just to know whether maybe were they less intelligent or less of a conscious being, were they lower on the animal scale, you know?
How would that help your journey?
Well, I mean, that means I'm elevating with each birth, right? It would feel that whatever I did in my past life elevated me to be a human. So if I continue to do better things in this life, maybe I'll get more spiritual in the next.
So that's always going to be true. So whatever we do in this life is always going to add to our bank balance. I often describe karma as a bank balance and a credit card and debit card. So you've got credit cards in terms of your pious and impious karma, which is worldly, right? So good deeds you do, get good reactions. Bad deeds you do, get bad reactions. But they're credit cards. Because ultimately, if you want to break free of the karmic cycle, you want those to be zero. But then you've got the debit card or the bank balance that you've got, which is your spiritual practices. The more you do, the better, right? The bigger the number in your bank account, the more happy you're going to feel. But the bigger the number in your credit card, you're going to like, oh my gosh, I've got so much debt.
Right.
And so ultimately we want it to be zero anyway. So it doesn't matter what our past is. It doesn't matter what we've been doing even in this life. What matters is how much are we investing in our spiritual growth, because that's what's going to increase the bank balance. Krishna is in charge of reducing the credit cards anyway. We'll have to get the reactions for whatever we've done. But Krishna also promises that if you're adding to your bank balance consistently, then he'll take charge of maybe going, okay, you know, John, you owed $10,000 on this credit card. I'll let you off with $5,000. provided we're investing in that bank with Krishna.
Please let me know how I can lower that to 2,000. That,
Well, increase your bank balance from 5,000 to 10,000.
okay. And now I know why it's called credit card. I understand.
But the bank balance always increases. It can never decrease. That's the special thing of the spiritual bank balance. The credit card can go up and down based on the activities we do, but the spiritual bank balance, it can never decrease. You might
Like
stop
if you
investing in
stop-
it.
If you stop doing spiritual practices or chanting or any of the ABCDEs, right? Will your balance,
It will just stay the same.
it won't come down.
It will not come down.
It won't.
Even if you do things which are very horrendous in your spiritual life, it never decreases. You might get a bank freeze. I'm assuming you get those in US. Your account might freeze,
Uh-huh.
so you might not be able to use it for some time.
Right.
But you can never, it will never decrease. And that's why this spiritual bank balance
That's
is like the
something
best
which
bank
is-
balance.
There's something which is a concept, right? It's in the Puranas or the Srimad.
The bank
Bhagavatam.
balance?
No,
Oh.
not the bank balance. The concept of that the spiritual account does not decrease in spite of bad deeds or whatever. Is there something in the Bhagavatam or something?
I don't know
Or
if it's,
Upanishads?
Sarah, but do you know?
What?
If it, this idea that spiritual life or spiritual activity, hold on, that the spiritual bank balance never decreases. I don't know if it's in the Bhagavatam.
If I may,
Where it is.
it's
I mean, it's in Bhagavad
to
Gita,
be made
no
aware
loss
of where we stand is for the reason, the question. To s-
No, I was just wondering if you.
Yeah, so Sarabhi was saying that there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita that there's no loss or diminution for anybody who's on this path
Oh,
of spiritual life.
there's
so-
no, is that right?
There's a verse in Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, okay.
So wouldn't that mean your life till the moment that you're spiritually aware would be just building blocks to get you to where you're going, and regardless if it's good, bad, or really bad, or really, really good, it's all there to make sure that you accept spiritualism as you did prior. So
Anything good we get is just a reaction for the good deeds we've done. Anything bad we get is a reaction to the bad deeds we've done. But both good and bad, this world is described as a school. And what does a school do? Teach you stuff. So the good and bad are there to teach us that actually ultimately we want to turn to spiritual life anyway. Because if we do something good and get good reactions, well, we know that at some point we're going to have to experience the bad reactions. And even the good reactions, it's like, how much is it worth for us? What does it really give us? You feel happy for a bit, but then that pleasure goes away. That satisfaction goes away.
it's like the man who goes to jail and finds God in jail because he has nothing to do but read books and happens to land upon the Bible
Right.
and or Quran and or
There's
spiritual.
another X.
Yes.
It was another X, Malcolm X.
Oh.
Not-
On Quran.
But when it comes to that, like just the trials and tribulations of people and whether or not it's good or bad, I can understand that everything leads to a higher self-conscious or a closer spiritual. So,
No, but I like that concept. I mean, that the spiritual balance doesn't really decrease.
It can only freeze. The
Huh?
account can freeze, but it will never
Right.
diminish.
I mean, even if you, let's say, you go through a phase of life where you forget God and you get busy in your material life, right? It's good to know that.
It never, the
It never
verse,
goes,
the
right?
verse in Bhagavad Gita says, in this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear.
Which chapter is that?
Chapter 2, verse 40.
40. Oh, good to know. Thank you.
but you are here now. So
I'm sorry?
you are here now.
No, but
You
that's the
added to your
point.
bank balance.
How would I know, like 3 months or 6 months, changes in my life, life changes, right? Might deviate me from my path. I always worry, will my spiritual account go down and I'm back to base level, become a materialist or whatever?
The mind may
Come back.
become confused, but the heart never forgets. So, as for the physical mind, that is attached to the physical body, whereas in how I've come to know it, the nefesh, the spirit, is attached to the heart. And they're actually just learning the science behind the heart. It has a memory, just like the brain. So the mind might become confused, but the heart never forgets. You'll know God in your day-to-day because you know God now.
Right.
And what you find is that even if you somehow go back to doing the old things that you used to do, you'll never be satisfied. You won't be satisfied.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I went to the pub.
Huh?
I went to the pub and I just could only sit in the corner
Mm.
because all I wanted to do was visualize. But I also didn't feel accepted because I didn't know anybody.
Mm.
But normally I would drink and then expel hello and make myself known. But I was just like, let me not make myself known. Who are these people? Who is that person? Let me visualize first. And I didn't want to associate with anybody. And the karaoke never came.
The reason you went never happened.
Never happened.
You
And
left.
there was
You left
The
before
drink
the
takes
karaoke.
away action with intent.
Remember that one for tomorrow,
Absolutely.
because I'm going to talk about something related to that.
Okay.
Remember your experience in the pub.
Just because you have a beer that has no alcohol doesn't mean it didn't have it. No. I was waiting for the feeling to come behind the disgusting taste of beer. It didn't come. So I didn't feel I don't know what I felt.
Mm. That's the power of spirituality, actually. Once you develop the taste for spiritual life, all the other tastes
Everything else
go to the
is-
back.
It's just like you start enjoying, like you're coming more and more the vegetarian food, right? And you really don't want to eat any
I
meat
never
or eggs
thought-
anymore, you
I
know?
never thought
Just
sugar
a thought about,
would
right?
be awful, but like fruits are amazing.
It's amazing food.
Like vegetables have a natural sweetness to them that I never
Ah.
figured until I lost all the taste of sugar. And then that's when everything else was sweet to me. So eating a salad, which I was just like, ew, I won't eat a salad. Now I'm just like, I need a salad. Like, get this fried stuff away from me.
One good habit leads to the next.
Yes. Oh.
Was that from Tuesday that you experienced that?
Oh, right
or
now
from before?
I'm cooking for thousands of people. So
Oh,
when
wow.
it comes to that, like I mostly cook for theater food. So it's fried, salads, grilled, and I have sustained from staying away from the fried, and that only left the salads and the meats, and I wound up just every day and. All I keep getting is, I'm so proud of you for eating salad. I'm like, thank you. And now I'm just like, nobody wants to eat this? Absolutely, I'll take it all, please, absolutely. But it's just the fact that my taste buds change.
Mm.
And when I do have something fried, I feel
Mm.
the grease, and it just steers me away from that one little taste of it, from leading to like, let me have 14 more mozzarella sticks because they're just so good. No,
And apply the concept spiritually now.
absolutely
sustain.
not. No, honestly, yeah, I can say the same probably because the more I come to class like this, even Tuesday led me to here.
Tuesday was excellent.
Even
This is
though
excellent.
with
Good
him
tea.
making sure like, are you coming for it? And I'm like, absolutely. And everything falls into place to where I am actually there when I had to be, and regardless of everything else, and we made it here on time. So it was just the fact, but entering the building and directing the many horses to this which is a lovely, like,
Not today.
I got invited to food now.
You didn't direct you to the McDonald's on the corner.
No.
This is a train the trainers course. You're gonna have them out there teaching what you taught them. That's excellent.
It comes to it. So when it comes to like even like I just used it right
Make
now.
sure you credit him.
Absolutely.
Make sure you give credit.
Good job.
Thank you.
That's nice.
Thank you.
Uh,
Cool. Any other questions, comments?
Enjoyed it, thank you.
It's good. Okay. Saturday. Do you want to talk about Saturday?
Yeah. So for the session on Saturday, we have it scheduled to start at 11, but we're thinking of doing 11:30.